Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, can you see me?
I can see you. Yes.
Okay, cool. I forgot there is like a little 2-minute delay with doing this.
Okay.
Okay, so we got one person there, so we are ready.
Okay, we're live on Facebook. Okay, good. I can see you.
Okay. Okay, cool. I forgot there is a little 2-minute delay with doing this.
Okay.
Okay, so we got one person there, so we are ready.
Okay, we're live on Facebook. Okay, good.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Paula Miller. I am the author of Why Are You Here? I'm so excited that you decided to join us this afternoon. We are coming to you to discuss child abuse. And my co-host that I have with me is Miss Debra Jackson.
Hello.
My name is Paula Miller. I am the author of Why Are You Here? I'm so excited that you decided to join us this afternoon. We are coming to you to discuss child abuse. And my co-host that I have with me is Miss Debra Jackson. Miss Jackson, could you introduce yourself to the people?
Yes, hi, I'm Debra Jackson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I'm very happy and pleased to be a part of this project today with Ms. Miller. And hopefully it will be beneficial to all. Debra Jackson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I'm very happy and pleased to be a part of this project today with Ms. Miller. And hopefully it will be beneficial to all.
Yeah, I am excited and thank you for joining me on this project. Again, I am Paula Miller. Some of you may know me by my book, Why Are You Here?, which was released in April of 2020. I'm very excited about this book. It has about 10 chapters in it speaking on child abuse. You can get the book through whyareyouhere.club. Again, it is whyareyouhere.club. If you go there, you will be able to purchase the book. Again, like I said, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is going to be a weekly theme for us here. And we ask that you join us every Tuesday at 7:30 to 8 o'clock to speak on child abuse. What we want to do is educate you on what child abuse is. We want to make sure that you are aware to know what to look for, how to handle different situations. We will be coming on again weekly and we will have different guests presented with us. So we ask that you tune in every week to join us in reference to child abuse. So we're going to go ahead and get started because our show is approximately 30 minutes long. So we're going to go ahead and get started with child abuse. So first of all, I want to basically state what child abuse is. Child abuse is 4 different stages, if you're not aware. You have your neglectful supervision, you also have your physical abuse, and you also have emotional abuse along with sexual abuse. So today I want to talk a little bit about neglectful supervision. So therefore, that is your most common type of child abuse. And this is where the parents or either the caretaker have failed to provide adequate supervision, clothing, even shelter, medical, or either mental health care for the child. Again, these are some of the basic essentials that any child would need from birth to the age of 17. A lot of times people don't understand what neglectful supervision is. So therefore, I want to elaborate a little bit on that so you have a better understanding as to what child abuse is. A lot of times, say for instance, you may walk into someone's home and you feel that the home is not up to your part as far as cleanliness. You may have a home that is very well clean, but you walk into someone's home and of course they have children and you're going to find things all over the floor. Of course, it may not be as clean and neat and tidy as your home, but again, you have to keep in mind, this is a home with children. So therefore, when you have small kids, I would say toddlers, that are not able to care for themselves, that is still in a baby bed and have to be carried. So therefore, it's okay for the home to be junky or cluttered, as you might want to say, because that child is not able to get about and move about on their own. So therefore, that is not saying that the parent is not caring for the child. The parent has less responsibilities for the child. No, this is a child that still has to be picked up and carried by someone, so the child is not movable on their own and walking through anything that's on the floor. Now, if you have older kids, you're talking about teenagers. Teenagers can walk over things, teenagers can pick up things. So, therefore, again, it's not so much as the house is not fit to the standards that you may be looking for, what you may expect for it to be set to. But again, it's a teenager, they're able to move about. Now, when you start speaking of a toddler, the children that are moving about, the ones that are 1, 2, 3, and on up, that are starting to pick up things and to get into things, now is when you want to make sure that you have clear paths for these kids. Again, your house might not be as tidy as someone else, but still, as long as this child is able to move about and it is not a safety or a hazard issue, that this is not considered neglectful supervision of that child. So, Ms. Jackson, I ask that you please chime in and kind of elaborate a little bit on your experiences for us, this, please.
Sure. I think one of the reasons I wanted to be a part of this, besides being a social worker, and this is, one of the areas of our mandates to make sure that we educate. One of the areas of the mandate in social work is that we educate, and that we certainly bring to light uh, issues that people have in areas such as child abuse. And I'm concerned, during COVID here that, there may not be a voice kept on these issues, that there's not the spotlight kept on child abuse. So I think in my own company, we do have clinics in several cities that we have staff who work and encounter families and children that and work in schools. And so we encounter families and children that oftentimes I think our staff are challenged with, well, is this neglect? Should I make a call to CPS? Is this parent being neglectful? So I kind of wanted to say that because we're in COVID, right? And so let's say during COVID, lots of people have lost jobs, right? And let's say that parents are having to maybe do things that they weren't able to do, maybe get several jobs. So that might create a scenario where the parent hadn't planned for the supervision of that child, right? There may be other situations where there's not money in the home anymore, right? And so there may be shortages of food and shelter and clothing and things of that nature. And so I think the point that I'm making is that when you're looking at neglect, you have to look at it on a continuum, right? You have to look at it with the circumstances that that are present, right? So COVID is bringing about, I think, a lot of new issues, especially in child abuse and with neglect in general, which is the specific topic we're talking about. And so it proposes a challenge for people. Is this neglect? Should I make a report to CPS? We've been told by CPS that they're inundated with reports. They're inundated with calls from mental health professionals like us, and just in general, people saying, well, this person doesn't have food, that person doesn't have shelter, this person is being neglected. And, I guess the question is that really neglect? When they are placed in a situation because of a circumstance like COVID that is not of their choosing, and what are their choices? So those are some of the challenges I think as mental health professional, our staff are dealing with. And I wanted to kind of be on to discuss and bring to light that these are also issues that everybody, I think just the general public is dealing with in terms of, should we make these calls? Should we make these type of calls for neglect? Some of the challenges I think as a mental health professional, our staff are dealing with, and I wanted to kind of be on to discuss and bring to light that these are also issues that everybody, just the general public is dealing with.
Exactly. Exactly. Right, exactly. I totally agree 100%. Again, like I say, especially with COVID-19, we have parents that are very anxious right now, especially when it comes to abuse in their homes. They're like, what do I do? Especially if they get a knock at their door, they begin to panic. So therefore, there are tons and tons of resources that are out there for people to be able to connect with some, because you don't have to go through this alone. And that's what I want you, the parents, to understand. You don't have to go through this alone. There is lots of help out there. I have resources that I can give at the end of the show for people to be able to reach out to. They can even contact me if they don't want to send a message through the live feed. They can contact me directly and I can give them some resources as well. Okay. Again, like I say, abuse has numerous amounts of, I guess you can say, failures or adequate supervision that is not provided to parents. So let's touch a little bit, Ms. Jackson, if we can touch a little bit on the physical abuse itself, where this is where the caretaker has inflicted some type of injury to a child, actually where it's open to the eye. And when you talk about injury to a child, it could be a scratch, it could be bruised, it could be broken bones, it could be whelps. Any type of corporal punishment is classified as physical abuse to a child. So therefore, it is not stated that you cannot whoop your child, because I know a lot of parents think, well, if I whoop my child, CPS is going to knock at my door. No, that's not necessarily true that CPS would knock at your door because you whoop your child. They will knock at your door because you have caused injuries to that child. You've caused some type of marks to where it is seen. You've caused some type of broken bone, some type of injury to that child to where it has been noticed. If you're going to spank a child, spank them on their bottom where there are no marks or bruises left. And you don't have to beat a child in order for them to understand what you're trying to state to them. So again, anytime you whoop a child and you leave any type of injury on that child, any type of marks, yes, you will have a knock at your door from CPS. So Ms. Jackson, would you like to chime in on that?
Yeah, I think this is a huge issue for us as well. And I think it is typically believed that any type of whipping for a child is abuse. Now, that may be a person's value judgment, because, you know, I personally don't whip children at all. I don't do that, right? But that's my value. That's not that another parent wouldn't decide to spank a child, or to, some people get rulers, right? And may tap them on the hand or whatever. But when you move from that to, as you said, causing injury to a child, then we're talking about you've moved it along the continuum from what you might consider a gentle redirection. Others may not, and as social workers, we have to be clear. Now, I wanted to be clear. Paula is not saying she's a social worker. I am, right? And but Paula has a background in the protective services system. But I think that for us as social workers and clinicians, we all have our own experiences and our own values, and that cannot be brought to bear by a protective services worker or a clinician in any type of situation with a child. So I think that that is important for our staff and people on this line, for the people that I work with to understand, families to understand. I think it's also important that, we are obligated by law to report even a suspicion of abuse or neglect. It doesn't have to be that it occurred. It could be even a suspicion, right? We, certainly I've had families to slap a child and, leave a mark on their face. Now, if they slapped the child and there was no mark, that would probably be a different situation than that hand mark imprint on the side of the face, because when they go to school, what's going to happen? That school's going to
Exactly.
call.
And also something else to keep in mind as far as our parents and our caretakers is that you don't want to discipline a child when you're upset. That's the worst time to actually discipline that child, because you have frustration built up in you. And so therefore you're going to not just spank the child, you're probably going to end up hitting the child more times than what you really want to hit them. You're probably going to end up hitting them with something that you really don't want to hit them with. So therefore that is actually going to cause the injuries to that child. So parents, caretakers, I ask, when you feel that you're at that urge and that child is doing something that is really upsetting to you or frustrating to you, take a step back. Take a breather before you decide to discipline that child. Hey, take a walk outside if you have to. Send that child in the room. Think about it. Think about the situation before you decide to discipline that child. Because again, once you start hitting them, sometimes you lose control because you're so angry. You're so built up with frustration inside of you till a lot of times you will forget. So again, I ask that you step back, take a breather, go in your room, think about it, or either send the child in their room and allow you some time to think about what you're going to do. How are you going to punish this child or either discipline this child for the actions in which they've caused? So again, I just really want to educate parents, and not just parents, but our caretakers, anyone that comes in contact with children. It could be our school teachers, it could be our parents, it could be our grandparents, even cousins, even our neighbors, because a lot of times I do realize this is not the same time as when I was growing up that anyone could discipline you back then.
Mhm.
And you didn't just get hit with a hand, you got hit with whatever your mom or dad could find. You got swapped with it. And you sometimes you did have those bruises on you. You go to school the next day and you're bruised, but no longer for that. You can no longer send a child to school with bruises or marks on them, because 10 times out of 10, the nurse, the teacher, someone is going to call in a case on you. You're going to have someone knocking at your door. So a lot of times, parents, we have to think about what we're doing when we're actually disciplining our children. So a lot of times you want to go into emotional abuse, because a lot of people say emotional abuse. How is it that you can actually have emotional abuse for children? Well, yes, you can have emotional abuse for kids, because this comes into play where you are actually belittling the child. You're calling them names. You're always saying that they're doing something wrong instead of giving them some positive feedback a lot of times. So therefore, this is emotional abuse. And again, it comes into play, because if that child later on down the line, it can cause trauma to them, whether you realize it or not. It can actually cause trauma to the child with emotional abuse. So Ms. Jackson, can you chime in on that as a social worker?
Sure. I think that, I did want to say this on even physical abuse or whatever. It wasn't so long ago that all of us were in elementary school, and corporal punishment in school was a valid form of, discipline. And so we've, certainly come some distance from that time period, but it hasn't been that long ago. And so I think it's important when we're looking at abuse to look at that we have people who still come out of, that time frame and don't see anything wrong with, extreme forms of discipline where maybe a belt or a uh, some type of tool is used. And as you said, that, you're going to leave marks on children, and that is going to get you into, that's going to get you noticed. That's going to get you into a different arena of monitoring by an outside entity. So I did want to share that on the physical abuse part too, and emotional. I think I was talking to you Sunday, Paula, and I was sharing that once I was driving down the street and saw a young lady who had a child that would not get in a car seat. And she was just really screaming. She hadn't, I didn't see her hit the child. I didn't see her um, do anything to the child other than she was in the parking lot with the door open, and everyone on the freeway could, she was visible to everyone on the freeway, and she was screaming at the top of her lungs to this child who probably was less than 2 years old. And I, would hazard to guess that most people would have the same reaction I did, because everybody started slowing down. So you could tell it was, it's an unusual situation, right? Because you're not going to slow your car down just for somebody in a parking lot, right? You're going to slow your car down if you believe that there's something unusual occurring. So I went to her, and I could see that she was really frustrated with this child. She was crying. The child was crying. He was screaming. She was screaming. And so I went to her, and you know my intent wasn't, are you nuts? Let me call CPS. That's not my intent. My intent is to help, right? So I said, ma'am, can I speak to you for a second? Could you just come here for a second? And she did. And I said, I really would like to talk to you. I'm a social worker, and I'm not here as a social worker though, but I want to explain something to you. You are very visible to a lot of people, and a lot of people aren't going to take the time to pull over and have this conversation with you. But this is how you appear. And when you're like that, you don't know how you appear, right? When you're mad at a child, you don't even care. You don't know how you appear. And one of the things I think we want to do on this call is to make sure that those people, those support systems, when you know that your loved one or your family member or our staff, when you know that people are getting to a point where they've lost control, when you see that, it's an obligation to help that. You have an obligation to help that person, to help them identify you're not handling this well. This is not going well for you. You're going to need some more tools in your toolbox in order to parent this child. So at any rate, to make a long story short, I did uh, give her an opportunity to calm down and realize that she was placing herself in a situation where she could have had a call to CPS, and that what I saw was emotional. Would it be considered emotional abuse to that child? But I don't think that was her intent, you know. But she needed some help.
Right. Definitely. Definitely. And like someone just sent over a message to me stating, a lot of times we tend to discipline, excuse me, let me correct that. A lot of times parents tend to discipline children the way that they were disciplined when they were growing up. But again, times have changed. You can no longer discipline that same way that you were disciplined when you were growing up as a little girl or a little boy, because that is actually a lot of times called physical abuse to that child. You will actually leave injuries, bruises, and marks on that child.
Mhm.
Again, there are several types of abuse. Actually, there are seven types of abuse, but we won't be able to go through all of them tonight. And the one that I definitely want to touch on a whole lot is the sexual abuse, but we won't get a chance to get to sexual abuse this evening because that is a show all by itself, because you're talking about sex trafficking and a lot of other things that
Mhm.
comes into play with that. Again, I just want to thank each and every one of you that have tuned in this evening to the show. Please, if you have not purchased your book called Why Are You Here, I ask that you would please go to my website, which is whyareyouhere.club. Whyareyouhere.club. Make a purchase of your book. It's $20. Also, while you're there, you'll be able to see that there are t-shirts and hats as well. If you make a purchase of a book, the postage is free. So it will actually be mailed out to you with no postage. And I ask that you tune in every week and check us out from 7:30 to 8 o'clock and see who some of our special guests going to be. I'm not going to tell you who the special guest is going to be for next week. I want to make sure that you tune in. I think you're going to be surprised as to who we will have on the show next week. I'm very excited about this. And again, this is not to belittle our parents or downplay anything. This is to educate, to let you know what abuse is when it comes to our children. Too many of our children are being injured on a daily basis, and it's time to put a stop. It's time to bring it to a stop. They can't speak for themselves. So I decided to be that person to speak for our children. I want to be that voice to be the voice for our children. Because again, as long as they're between the ages of newborn and 17, someone has to fight for them. Someone has to stand up for them. I've chose to be that person for our children between the ages of newborn to 17 years of age. Again, I thank each and every one of you for tuning in this afternoon and talking with us and sending me the messages. Again, if you have specific questions that you would like to have answered here on the show, please send them in advance to Paula 2012 at sbcglobal.net. Paula 2012 at sbcglobal.net. And we will get to your questions. We will even answer them online. So therefore, excuse me, on air. So therefore, if you send the messages to me throughout the week, we will answer them the following week on air. So I want to thank you again. Tune in next week to see who our special guest will be. Thank you, Ms. Jackson, for being my co-host on this show. I look forward to working for you. I look forward to this show taking off and being a very informative show to our parents, our grandparents, and a lot of other people that come in contact with children. Again, thank each and every one of you. I love you and God bless.
God bless. Take care.
Being my co-host on this show. I look forward to working for you. I look forward to this show taking off and being a very informative show to our parents, our grandparents, and a lot of other people that come in contact with children. Again, thank each and every one of you. I love you and God bless.